Compared to the perfect person, men appear to be doing the wrong thing on purpose. In other words, misbehaving. When someone misbehaves, they must be punished. When someone consistently misbehaves, his power must be taken away or limited severely to prevent a bigger disaster. When someone belongs to a group that is known for misbehavior, his power is removed preemptively. This is how most women relate to men. Kimberly was bent over and looked as if she might be choking. "Are you all right, dear?" Claudia asked. The dark head nodded. After some moments, still looking at her lap, Kimberly whispered, "But what if they've proven that they can't be trusted? That they're bad?" This is a question that I get a lot. Although Kimberly did not know it, Claudia knew precisely of what she spoke. But there were still more pieces of information needed to disarm the particular bomb. She prayed she could help Kimberly around this barrier now in the abstract. "I think you're asking about dangerous men," she began. Kimberly looked up suddenly, her eyes wide in surprise. Claudia continued, her words gentle but firm. "It is true that there are dangerous men. Unfortunately, when a woman has encountered one, especially as a child, she often concludes that all men are dangerous. Then she spends a lifetime defending herself against all men, not only the ones who deserve it." She added, It is even more tragic than you can imagine." "Why?" Kimberly asked suspiciously. "Because most women subscribe to the idea that the best defense is a good offense. With the belief that she must defend herself against all men, she actually attacks them. This leaves the 97% of mankind that is healthy and honorable having to defend themselves from her." Claudia sighed and continued, "Since men are single-focused, if they have to defend themselves, they cannot simultaneously defend the woman that they would otherwise have gladly protected. In other words, they cannot defend her because they have to defend themselves from her. Thus, she is left on her own when she could have had most men on her side." "It's exhausting," Kimberly explained and looked abashed in her accidental admission. "Yes," Claudia responded slowly, "it's a heavy sword to lug around." "What's the alternative?" Karen interjected. Claudia suspected Karen was uncomfortable with the tension palpable in Kimberly. "If Karen's going to teach this, I'll have to train her to allow tension instead of always easing it." Claudia replied, simply anticipating, "Lay it down. Lay down your sword." "But how will I protect myself?" Kimberly asked, her eyes desperate. Claudia sipped her tea, leaving the question hanging in the air between them. "Before I answer your question directly, let us take another look at this sword," she said, "how it functions and how well it actually performs. Is that agreeable to you both?" So first, let me pause for a second. This is a question about, because Claudia has brought up to the women that you don't have to be so armored around men and you don't have to be so guarded. And well, the question comes up, well, what about the bad men? This advice that you give, this is something that people say to me all the time too. This advice that you give works for healthy men. It works for these types of environments. And so I thought that this was the perfect way to respond to those questions or to those thought processes. So the women nodded with a noticeable lack of enthusiasm. "The most accurate word for what we're referring to is castration." "Isn't that a bit harsh?" Karen protested. "Yes, the word is harsh, but no more harsh than the action and its effects." "Okay, I'm listening," Karen responded. "In Webster's dictionary, the word castrate means to deprive of strength, power, or efficiency, to weaken. Its synonym is emasculate, which is a little milder and the preferred word to use around men. Even the word castrate can make a man flinch." Right, reasonably so. "I prefer emasculate too," Karen said. "Most women do." So she goes on to explain what we talked about in a previous video about how when women stop castrating men, men will stop objectifying the women. And so I'm going to go down a little bit, and it says, "Usually I regret my reaction," speaking about how she reacts to men when they behave poorly or misbehave. She says, "Usually I regret my reaction, but in those situations I can't think. The person is in my face. The pressure is too great," Kimberly said. Claudia nodded, thankful for the opening. "Imagine this is how women on the attack seem to men. Pressure with no relief. Pressure provoking the most primitive defensive response, which they struggle to control and which most men deeply regret." What she's not doing is blaming the woman here. What she's doing is showing you what is going through the minds of most men. I love how she presents these topics with no judgment. She's not asking you to pick a side. She's always approaching it from a matter of trying to understand the other person. Not saying you agree with what they're doing or what they're thinking, but just trying to understand them. So even in the objectification conversation where she says, if we stop castrating men, they won't objectify us. She's not saying it's right and they objectify us and it's okay that they do that because we did this first. She's just explaining it. And I talked about this in a previous video where a lot of times we don't get to results and we don't get to be in peaceful situations with people because we think that in order to understand you, I have to agree with you. I, as a person who am a believer of God, can understand your feelings about being an atheist and why you feel the way that you feel. I don't have to agree with that to respect and understand your humanity. And I think that is where we get into all of these conversations. We're not even really talking about men and women anymore. We're talking about people. That is where we get into these altercations where we can't get to a common ground and we can't get to understanding the other person because I'm trying to be right and you're trying to be right and I'm trying to tell you that what you feel is wrong and I'm trying to tell you that what you experience. I'm not saying that there's no right and wrong. There's more often than not, there is a right and wrong. What I'm saying is you're not going to win an argument or get along with a person if you're always trying to be right. We need to work on trying to present perspective. And that's what she's doing here. She's saying, okay, in these situations where you have a person who is misbehaving or a man who is doing something, this is what's on the other side of that. This is what he's thinking. This is what he's understanding. And when you can understand that and you can think from that point of view, you will move differently. The problem is we want to do what works for us, what hasn't been working for us, and we want to beat people over the head with how we feel and our opinions. We want to tell people what to do. And I say all the time, you're so busy trying to control other people, but when's the last time you went to the gym and did the things that you said you were going to do? The things that you have control over, when's the last time that you did them? How many years in a row have you had the same New Year's resolution? Can you control yourself while you're out here trying to control other people? And that's not to make you feel bad. It is, again, just to give you the presentation of a thought. This is all about trying to understand the other person, not about whether or not what they're doing is right. Objectification is wrong. Emasculation is wrong. But if we can understand why these things happen, we can work on the side of preventative maintenance rather than always being on the attack. So Claudia pressed her eyes closed, slowly shaking her head. Please, God, help her to see this. She opened her eyes and willed herself to be patient. I will answer your question, but first, are you willing to see something from a completely different point of view, from a man's point of view? She ran her fingers through her hair, pulling hard on the short strands as if to pull her brains out. She says, this is so hard. Why is it hard? I just wanted to stop frog farming, meaning she wanted to stop being the type of woman that turns Prince Charmings into frogs because a man mentioned that to her earlier in the book. So Claudia responded and said, castrating men is the foundation of frog farming. It's the how of frog farming. The act of diminishing men and the attitude that they deserve to be diminished. Castration is how all women bring out the worst in men. Now, remember, she asked this question and we got here because she said, what about the bad men? So what she's not saying is women hold the responsibility of bad men being bad men. What she's saying is there's a reason that people behave and act the way that they do. There's a reason that we as women or some women have a tendency to be guarded. There's a reason that some men have a tendency to act in a deviant way. And so she's explaining these things so that we can have the understanding, not so that we can point fingers and blame, but so that you can understand and then act accordingly. So again, don't listen to this and think that she's victim blaming and trying to say who did what. That's a very immature response to all of the things that this lady is saying. But anyway, this is coming from The Queen's Code by Alison Armstrong. It is not the quickest read, but it's really good.